Hey everyone, this is going to be a track walk at Mid-Ohio in the full course configuration. We are in the Porsche 911 RSR today. I'm going to play the lap in full in cockpit view, and then we'll do it again in chase view, and then we'll do some track analysis. Now here's the lap in chase view. Alright, for your reference, that was a 117.48. Now, coming into turn 1 here, I'm not going to be trying to shave off too much speed. We're going to do a quick little bit of brake input, not too much, and then we're just going to slowly trail off the brakes into the turn. We want to basically try to carry as much speed as possible. I will say this turn can be a little deceptive. It can often seem like you want to carry more speed, but you can very easily wash out wide, which, with there's a lot of grass there, you're not going to be able to bring it back in anytime soon. So you definitely want to slow down the car, just not too much. My braking marker here is right after the 200 is when I start my braking. You kind of want to be braking before you reach that 100 marker. But like I said, then we go in here, just slowly trailing off the brakes, slow the car down, just not too much. And then right before we see this yellow curbing, you want to start to either get a little bit of maintenance throttle or start to get back on the gas. If you've slowed down a little bit, you can start to pick up the throttle. And we're kind of you're kind of following the curvature of this curb, but just kind of a late apex. As in here, let me switch to the chase view here. You'll see I'm a little bit off it, and then I'm slowly coming back into the edge of the curb right there. So it's kind of a late apex, but like I said, in general, if you follow this curbing, you know, you'll be okay. Some people do get on the curbing. It's to me, I think it's a little sketchy. You can go over it, you know, without the car bouncing around too much. You just have to, you know, play with the throttle a little bit. And the thing is, if you just don't land right, if you got a little too much throttle, it can be very easy to spin the car coming off of this curb. So I'd prefer to just avoid it. All right. Then just, you know, make sure you track out wide, full throttle all the way into the next hairpin. Now coming up here, my brake marker is, I think, a little bit after the 300, between the 300 and the 200. I kind of look for like when the hill really starts to go up. You can kind of see in the white line on the left where it kinks a little bit. That's when the gradient of the hill really increases, and it's kind of like right before that I want to reach my peak brake pressure. Let's see, so reaching peak brake pressure, yeah, right about here. And that's, like I said, that's right where the hill starts to go upward. You're going to get some good compression, so you can put in a decent amount of brake pressure and shave off a lot of speed. You know, we're at 130 miles an hour here, and we're going into a hairpin with not too much room. Now, I will say in this lap, I probably didn't take this turn in the way that I wanted to, but I figured I'd actually use this as a teaching moment. So first, let me just show you how I'm going into this turn. In this case, I was kind of treating it like a double apex. In general, I actually don't, and I'll explain why. But first, let's just go here nice and slow. We're going to come in, trail off the brakes. As you can see, the hill's going up and then it's coming down. So obviously, the car's going to get light. You're going to be very traction limited. You cannot have too much brake input going up over this hill. One thing I like to do is I like to downshift early and get a little bit of that engine brake to, you know, drag me in the rear. To help me slow down, especially if I'm going a little hot, which is one of the things that I did do here. I was going a little hot, but let's just finish this turn here. So, like I said, first apex, wash out wide, and then come in here into your second apex. Now, normally when you are double apexing this turn, you would have wanted to slow the car down a little bit more. Let's switch to the chase view here. You would want to slow the car down a little bit more, come in a little bit closer, and actually, so this is basically where your second apex would be, and you want to come back a little. You want to be a little bit closer to the curb, not wash out quite as wide as I did, and then you would come back in. And if you see, so they kind of patch the tarmac in the middle there. That's kind of where your car would be when you're double apexing here. So I'm like half a car length, maybe another car length out on this turn. And then as you can see here, if you follow that tarmac, you'd be hitting your second apex right at the end of the curbing here. However, if you see coming out of this turn, you would not be able to go through full throttle it. You'd probably be trailing the brakes all the way to here, and then you would slowly pick up the throttle as you're coming out, and you'd probably reach full throttle somewhere around here, and then you would track out. Okay, but if you notice me in this turn, the way I took it, I'm full throttle here. Now the reason I was able to do that is because I was able to open up my steering way earlier than if I was closer into the curbing. I'm picking up the throttle all the way out here. So what I think we can learn from this is the fact that whenever you do screw up a turn or your line is slightly off, there are always ways to make up the time lost. So my time lost here is the fact that I lengthened the length of my line. Okay, so I could not. So you have more ground to cover. It's going to take you longer. However, because of now the angle I'm coming into the second apex, I'm able to get on throttle way earlier. I remember when I was driving this lap, while I washed out wide here, my delta started to go into the negative. But once I passed that apex and tracked out, it went right back into the green, because I was able to get on throttle so much earlier. Another thing I'd like to mention is that I said I did take this turn as a double apex because I was coming in a little hot. If I'd shaved off a little more speed like I normally do, I actually don't come even as close into the curbing as I do here. If you see to the left of me, those tire marks, those are actually coming from a different track configuration. But that's actually where I normally come in. And I can carry decent speed throughout that whole curve here, and I'd have a very good angle coming out here, and I can get on the gas early, kind of like I did right now. And I found in general that seems to it seems to do very well in regards to lap time, because if you do the double apex hugging the inside there, even though you're shortening the length of the track, you're going to be going slower than if you're coming out wide and just taking a very late apex here. There's a lot of lines I feel like you can take through here. The most important things to remember at the end of the day is you are going up a hill here that you're going to crest over, so you need to make sure that you're very sensitive on the brakes over here. Otherwise, it's very easy to just end up in the gravel. And then the other most important thing is that this is you're coming onto your second main straight of this track. So getting on the throttle as soon as and as hard as you can is very important for your lap times. Okay, so now we're, like I said, track out wide. And this is a very long straight. Not much to it, I would just try to shorten the length of your line as much as possible. So I come in here to the right to try to just straight line this curve a little bit, and then you come back over to the left over here for the next right-hander. Now this is a corner that I feel like a lot of people try to take too hot. You definitely need to slow down for this corner, otherwise it's very easy to go off track. Before we get into this corner, one thing I want to say is that the rest of this track, besides like the straight after turn one and the straight we were just on right now, the rest of the track is pretty much just all turns that are linked together. Kind of like last week's track Motherboard. The last four corners are like a corner complex, all leading into the other, so you have to make sure that one corner sets up the next corner. What I will say here is that because of how the turns are, and the fact that you don't have a 3-4 corner complex that eventually leads onto a straight where you need to make sure that that previous turn you were set up properly for, so that you can get good speed on the straight. Here, it's just corners into corners into corners and no real straightaways anywhere that you're trying to set up for. So, you don't necessarily have to get every corner right so that you are eventually properly set up for one last very important corner. So my point is kind of like the last hairpin. I feel like there are kind of multiple lines here. Not completely different, obviously, because it's all about carrying speed. But as we go into this turn, I'll show you what I mean. So what's more important is kind of like what I explained in the hairpin, that if you are taking a slightly different line, make sure that whatever you're losing by taking that line, whether you have to go slower to take that line, or whether the line is slightly longer, you're making up for it. Meaning, if you are going slower to take the line, make sure that you are getting on the gas, harder, or as soon as you can. While if you're lengthening your line, make sure you're carrying as much speed as you can. It's just there's a give and take, and I've just noticed as I was hot lapping here, that I had a lot of laps that were very close together in time, but how I took each one of the corners was slightly different. I do feel like there's a preferred line, simply because if you are in a race, there's other considerations, fuel, tire wear, etc. So, there are some lines that may overheat the tires, kind of like, for example, the hairpin line that we just went through. I was definitely scrubbing off those tires a lot when I went in hot, and I was on the brakes probably a little heavier than I wanted to be, shaving off that speed. So I probably, heated up my tires a little more than I wanted to. Luckily, we were going right out onto a straight. So, they got to cool down a bit. Here, it's corner into corner into corner. So your tire wear and tire heat and everything are probably going to matter a little bit more. So I'm going to show you the ideal line, but I'm going to definitely use this next corner right here as an example of how you can. There are definitely multiple lines you can take here. This is probably the fastest part of the track. We're hitting 160 miles an hour, it looks like, and this is your biggest braking zone, I'd say. It looks like I'm already starting to let off the throttle here. I do right foot brake, so I let off a little earlier, but I think I'm reaching my peak brake pressure probably a little bit after the 400. Yeah, so like between the 400 and 300. Like I said, you definitely want to slow down the car. Brake, and then you start to turn in right after the 100, and start to trail off the brakes. As you can see here, after the track, there's a hill down of grass that if you hit that, you're going right into a wall. And it's not fun. So definitely you need to slow down the car, and this is a very acute angle. So you're gonna have to go slower. So as we go into here, I come down all the way into second. Now, as you can see, the curbing kind of kinks, and right here I kind of try to line up my car with the curb. So right there is curb's got a little kink to it, and I wanna try to line my car up with the second half of this curbing. Now, this is where I say there's multiple lines here. What I normally like to do is slow down the car enough so that I can basically hug the right side of the track over here. So I'm very far on the right side, as you can see, and I'm doing this to open up the next corner. And you'll see why I prefer to open up the next corner as much as possible. However, there are a lot of people that will also carry a little more speed than I did right now, and then as they come here, they'll end up tracking more to the middle of the track, and you can see all the tire tracks out there too. And honestly, it can work. Yeah, as you come in here, you're going to be in the middle of the track, but it also means that you're going to have to slow down a lot more and put a lot more steering angle than me coming into this corner right here. I like to do it like I said, because number one, coming up this hill, I don't feel like I'm scrubbing the tires as much, which keeps them cooler. I also get to come in at a better angle, I feel like, and I feel like I would like to be as straight as possible here, because as you can see, we're coming up over a hill that then falls away very quickly. So at the top of that hill, you're going to be very traction limited. I feel like if I had more of a turn, more of an angle coming into this, what happens is I cannot get on the gas as soon as I like and as hard as I'd like. And coming up over this hill, I would be tracking out even further wider than I am right now. Right now, I'm about in the middle of the track, and that's kind of where you want to be. But it can work. You know, it's not necessarily a slower line the other way. And like I said, the way all these corners are, there's not one, ultimate corner at the end that we need to be set up properly for. And if we took a different line through all the other corners, we'd be screwed for that last corner. It's kind of like at Motherboard and that last corner complex. If you go wide on one corner, it compromises your entry into the next one, and you probably end up going a little wide on the next one. And then for that last corner going on to the front straight, if you're not all the way to the left over there, that's going to really sacrifice your speed going into turn one on your next lap. There really isn't anything light here. The very last corner, it's kind of completely unaffected by any of these other corners, So that's what I'm saying. Your line, I would say, is not as important here as it is just to make sure that wherever you are sacrificing lap time, you make up for it in some other way. Now let's just go back here and just go over this corner real quick. So you trail the brake into the corner. Again, you're going to have nice compression. But we actually don't want to shave off too much speed. We just want to make sure that we don't, fly over this hill. So we come in here on the brakes, trailing them in. I like to hit that curbing. It helps you rotate a little bit. And then once I come up over this hill and I have traction, I get back on the gas. Bring it back over to the left side here. This is a fairly basic corner. Just trail the brakes in. You don't, and again, there's multiple lines here. Some people will want to come take this turn and stay further to the right to open up the next left-hander. I honestly think it's completely fine to also just stay in the middle of the track and carry a little more speed. So we come in here. I usually take this curbing. I'm ending up in the middle of the track, which is really fine. Being here, I'm already carrying more speed into this left-hander right here. And the thing is that you can really take this curbing and straighten this corner out as much as possible. And you can see I'm still full throttle. I'm not really sacrificing much. Some people, though, will slow down, come over to the right here a little bit more, and then full throttle and straighten this next turn out a little bit more, which may help because, as you can see here, as I'm coming over this, I do lift off the gas a little bit just because as you can see, we're coming up over another hill. Car gets a little bit light. And going over that curbing, there's some dirt, so it can be a little slippery. I probably could have kept full throttle and then just countersteered to control the rear. I decided to lift just to be a little more on the safe side. If we had straightened out this turn a little bit more by you know, coming out further right over here, you probably would have been going up over that hill nice and straight, and you wouldn't have had to lift or worry about anything, you know. So again, it's all, you lose something in one place, you know. Here, if you wanted to come to the right, you'd be going slower because you'd have to slow down the car more to bring it over. But you'd make it up, you know, keeping full throttle from the moment you're over to the right here, versus where I lifted, you know. So it basically, I feel like this track is a lot of give and take. Just basically try to carry as much speed as you can wherever you are. Alright, so now we come up over this hill, and it's blind, but if you can see the angle that I'm coming up over this, you continue to the left here, and then kind of that white line, once you feel like you're lined up with it, you can pretty much go straight there, and you will be lined up with this curb on the right there. Again, we have this hill and everything. We're just trying to keep the car as straight as possible. I usually take this curbing. Now coming into here, you can see we're going into another right-hander very, very, very quickly. Again, 2 lines here. I've done it both ways, and I feel comfortable doing it the way I took it here more so than the other way, but the other way is actually how I used to do it. I really feel like they both end up with the same lap times. What I'm doing here is, because I have steering input in, I'm kind of treating this, and I'm treating this basically as one long curve. I don't get on the brakes too hard. So you can see my peak brake pressure was, you know, 40%. I'm not on the brakes too hard, and I'm just trying to scrub off speed as I'm going, you know, taking this long curving. Now if we go back here, another way to do it is you come around this curb. I would literally straighten out my steering here. I would still be full throttle, and then probably around here I would go very hard onto the brakes. You know, maybe even like 60-70% brake pressure, 80% brake pressure. Go on the brakes very, very hard in a straight line, keeping the steering straight, and I'd probably let off right around the edge of that curbing. And then, but I would be much slower, and I would turn, and then I would turn into the next right-hander. I mention this simply because, you know, some people are not comfortable being on the brakes while they're turning. I am, especially in the RSR. I feel like, you know, it helps keep the nose down, and you get a lot of grip in the front end. And I'm just used to doing a lot of trail braking. Yeah, so some people, they prefer to brake and then turn, brake and turn, versus turning and braking at the same time. So it's 2 options here. I really feel like if you do it properly, like I said, so you're going to be slowing down the car more here before you turn in, but that's okay because you were going full throttle longer than I am in the way I took it now. So like I said, wherever you're losing in one way, you're gaining in another way. And I think that's like, you know, one of the special characteristics of this track especially. Alright, so now we are coming up over this hill. I do like to hit this curbing right here. Helps you rotate a little bit. Again, you're going to be traction limited. You're coming up over a hill. This, I think, is just going to take a little bit of memorizing. You're blind coming up over this hill. You do enough laps, you'll have an idea of how far out the edge of the track is. And once you have that idea, you'll kind of have an idea of how to point this car and get on the throttle even before you see the curbing. So right here, right now, I'm, as you can see, basically full throttle, even though I couldn't at first see the curb. But you basically point your car towards the curbing when you have an idea of where it is, and then just go full throttle and just track out. And you want to use up all that curbing just to open up the track and give you a little more room, because like I said, it's blind coming up over that hill, but you just want to get on the gas as soon as possible. Coming into this right-hander here, it feels tricky, even though it's kind of basic. You have a little braking zone, and then you're braking, and then trailing off and just turning in and hitting the next inside curbing apex. So in a lot of regards, it's very basic. I think what makes it tricky is that it's off camber. As you can see, again, you have a hill, but because we're going to be turning left, the downhill part of this is essentially making your turn off camber. So I think I start braking right around the 200. Let me see. Yeah, I'm reaching peak brake pressure around the 200. I'm not shaving off too much speed. I want to carry speed here. And then right where the grass ends there, that's pretty much where you start turning in. And you just want to trail the brakes all the way into the next curbing. So it's shave off a little speed, turn in, trail the brakes, trail the brakes. I do like to get on this next curbing. See right there, and that's pretty much where I pick up the throttle. And you want to just use up all the track here, and pretty much right where this yellow curbing ends, as you can see, that's when I start my braking. Now this is a hairpin leading on to going into the last corner before the front straight. This one is also really tricky because it's very easy to wash out wide into that wall. It's kind of a little off camber right around here, slightly. And honestly, this corner is very similar to the hairpin after turn 1 that we went over initially. It's similar in regards to the fact that you can take this as a double apex. Let's go into chase view. This kind of being your first apex, wash out wide, and this being your second apex over here. Again, people take it differently. I like to bring it out wider, so I will carry more speed into here and trail the brakes for a long time, and also, like that other hairpin I mentioned, I will downshift very early when my RPMs are up, just to help me drag in the rear, because carrying speed here, like I said, you'll notice it's very easy to wash out too wide. Reason why I do that is because I like to come into this turn very, very, very late, because I like to stay as close to the right here as I can be. Other people will slow down the car a little bit more and hug the inside here, and then they will pretty much apex more around right around here, kind of where you can see that little white line next to that red curbing. That's where they'll apex, while I'm apexing over here. Now obviously if they're apexing this early, they're already going to start to track out, and they're going to end up more in the middle of the track here. And then what that does is the fact that they need to come back to the right, just lengthening their line a little bit more, and they're not going to be able to go full throttle, not going to be able to pick up as much speed, but they would have gone through that corner quicker than me. So like I said, wherever you're gaining in one line, you're losing in the other, but then vice versa also happens. Reason why, though, I do it my way is because this very last turn here can be sketchy. I've literally even done this in races the first couple of times I drove Mid-Ohio. Number one, taking this curbing can be a little bit unsettling. But also, you'll feel there's kind of a dip here when you're very close. Like if I was another tire width over, there's a big dip, and you really want to be full throttle. As you can see here, I'm full throttle whole way. I'm never lifting. I'm full throttle from here, right there. I'm full throttle from here. Okay. When you are full throttle, very inside on this curbing, there's a dip that you hit, and it compresses the car a lot, and you'll feel it when you're coming out of that dip, and then the ground levels out, the rear gets very light, and you just spin right around and smack yourself right into the inside wall. So I like to stay further out here, but as long as you're full throttle from here, you're going to be carrying a lot of speed onto that front straight, and it's totally fine not needing to shorten your line. Doing it the other way, people are going to be going slower into that turn, but then they want to shorten their line, so they're going to go up on that curbing. Like I said, there's a lot of different lines here. It's all about what you feel comfortable with, and then obviously in races, tire degradation, all those kind of things. Just make sure you make up for any sacrifices you're making. That's the best thing that I can say. But so like I said, we're coming out of here. I just like to stay full throttle this whole way through, and then just track out coming onto the front straight. And that was a lap at Mid-Ohio in the full course configuration in the 911 RSR. So, good luck and have a good race this week.